Join us today as we cover the Packers rumor mill and give our initial impressions of the prospects we saw last weekend at the NFL Combine.
Yeah, I've been wanting this shit forever. I've been in the field with whatever they throw at me. Brush it off, pick myself up, moving on to the better. Okay. Hey. Yeah, ain't no errors, baby. It's a new era. I wake up early feeling rich like I'm cash.
Welcome in another episode of Sounds Gouda. Appreciate y'all coming back and taking a listen to us. I'm one of your two co-hosts. My name is Rob Ralph. Next to me is my best friend, Jordan Olson. Just know that we do have new content every Wednesday and Saturday on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcast. We are also on the socials as well. I'm at Sounds Gouda with 3 A's, and Jordan is at Olson Jord. Today, we're going to be talking about some Packer rumor mill. So a lot of stuff swirling around these days as we get closer to the free agency and some combine talk. But to start it off, Jordan, the Packers signed Isaiah McDuffy to a 2-year, $8 million deal with some incentives up to $9.5 million. What are your initial thoughts on that?
Yeah, initially, I'm happy with the signing. I think that a couple weeks ago when we did our Packers free agency, keep or let walk episode, I think our initial impressions were that we should try to retain Isaiah McDuffy. We know that he has some deficiencies in the passing game, but for much of the year, he was our one of our starters, even in the nickel role until Edgerrin Cooper became healthy and ready to take on that job. But then McDuffy moved over and played Sam when we were in 3 linebacker sets. As much as I would love them to go out and get a Zach Bond or a Nick Bolton, I think that this is a really low-key move that gives them the flexibility. They don't have to reach for that. They can find a linebacker in the 5th round to complement this room and compete with Tyron Hopper. Overall, it's great. I mean, it's a guy that's giving you 183 tackles over the last 2 years. One thing to note, though, is that his PFF grades have declined slightly since his rookie season. I think he had a PFF grade of a 60 his rookie year, 58.6 following, 57.1 2 seasons ago, and then 56.1 last year. So I'll be curious to see now that it'll be in a second year under Hafley's scheme, and maybe won't be asked to do so much in coverage for the entirety of the season, kind of how he does. But overall, I'm happy. Do you have any other thoughts?
If you were to have put a gun to my head and said that the Packers were going to make this the first official signing of one of these types of players for the Packers, I would have said, yes, absolutely, that this is going to happen. I mean, I think that means like Eric Wilson probably is out the door, right? You want to see what you have in a Tyron Hopper there as your fourth linebacker there, still pretty raw, but and also too, like, he contributes quite a bit on special teams, so that's also very helpful, and he knows Hafley's scheme, and he has a ton of snaps in Hafley's scheme, so just provide some really good depth, some really good snaps, some really good experience, so I'm not shocked at all, and I think it's pretty good value. So,
and I don't know that it necessarily ends Eric Wilson's career in Green Bay for sure. But even if he signs that 1 year, deal, they could go into camp and a rookie could certainly take his job. So we'll see what happens in that room, but good depth addition for sure. So yeah, let's talk some Packers rumors.
There's plenty of them.
Just some Packers. Let's just start with something a little bit more low key, right? Not necessarily a Packers rumor, but maybe setting the framework for some of our other conversation here. So recently, Deebo got traded to the Commanders for a 5th round pick. So what do you think that means for the Jaire Alexander market? Do you believe that that's the framework for what we could get for Jaire in a 5th round pick? Or, where do we stand with Jaire Alexander at this point in time?
Yeah, I mean, I think that they're probably trying to get maybe a 3rd or a 4th. I don't know if they will. I think this all just comes down to his injury and his injury history and how many snaps he's actually played over his tenure. Now, granted, Deebo too hasn't been the healthiest. I don't know if he's quite been like Jaire Alexander. I don't have those stats in front of me, but you would think that you could probably at least get a 5th for Jaire Alexander. I don't know. Maybe some teams won't bite on that. Obviously, the Commanders are in win now mode, and just know what that gives them for Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin there. Just another solid weapon, especially if they can stay healthy. So, I mean, if Jaire could do the same, maybe this next year he does end up, playing most of the games and is really impactful for, I don't know, quarterback needy team like the Raiders or something.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I think in a trade alone, Jaire for draft capital, I think that's fair for a team who really wants to secure his services without him going to free agency. And while he does have a big cap hit, the money is fairly controllable for the next 2 years, and they could certainly restructure. There's the other option too, and we've been kind of banging the drum for this most of the time, is that put him in a trade where you get a player back.
yeah,
that kind of segues into my next conversation point for you. Maybe you see him going to a team like the Seahawks, in a trade where you get a DK Metcalf back, and that's a big rumor mill right now. So it's been reported that the Packers have picked up the phone and called about DK Metcalf. So, maybe there's conflicting reports, but there's a lot of conversation about that. So, do you believe that DK will be a Packer? Do you think he's a good fit for a Packer? I don't know. Where do you stand on DK Metcalf and green and gold?
Well, I mean, just on the field, how he would work in this offense, how big he is, how fast he is. I mean, 1,000%. He's extremely fast, very big. He's a giant wide receiver. He's not a tight end, so he's kind of like that hybrid. And yeah, there's a lot of things you can do with him. So yes, he would immediately come in and be able to work really well within the Matt LaFleur offense. I think what was the rumor going that they wanted like a first and
stuff. So like a player.
Yeah, that's too rich, and I think that's probably already been reported. But even just like basic common sense, like that's not going to happen. So, I like a Jaire and like a background pick maybe. They're probably going to want as high as they can get, but I don't know. Third, fourth, I'd probably be okay with as far as getting DK Metcalf. Maybe that's not enough, but you're getting another player to back that when healthy is extraordinarily very, very talented and very good. And you'd be getting somewhat sort of a high draft for him. And plus, to note too as well, the Seahawks are in salary cap hell. Like they're not quite the New Orleans Saints right now, because New Orleans Saints just set the bar, for other teams of what not to do. But the Seahawks got to be like on top of that list, right? Maybe right behind, or maybe a couple behind. So, they're looking at different ways to get some of the players and get some value back for them.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I kind of just personally don't have a ton of interest in DK Metcalf. Obviously, from a talent perspective, that would be an infusion. But for some of the other like kind of peripheral diva-ish stuff that we're probably going to get from DK, and the fact that if we do trade for him, he's going to want this contract extension. And, that's going to be at least 3 years in addition to the 1 year he has left. And it's probably going to be to the tune of 25, probably closer to 30 million. So not only do you have to give up what they want as a first round pick and a player, but then you got to give them a 3 year, $30 million or $90 million extension, $30 million a year on top of that. So we're tied to a guy for 4 more years. That's a huge cap hit. I think I would just rather draft our own guy in the second round than give up a first and then have to give him that massive contract.
Yeah, 1,000%.
Yeah, I agree with you, Rob. Maybe a third and a Jaire Alexander would be as high as the trade compensation I'd be willing to go. But I'm still out because of the contract reason we talked. So one other side question for you. This was a fun debate between my brother and I. But if you did do let's say at third, we settled on a third round pick and stuff as a player, but they want one of our wide receivers back. Obviously, Reed and, he's a safe pick. Nobody's going to want Christian Watson right now, but I think the obvious candidates would be Wicks or Dobbs. So if you had to trade one of those guys at the third, if you were compelled to do the DK Metcalf deal, which one would you trade to the Seahawks?
That's tough. I'm going to go with the person that catches the ball a little bit more consistently. Probably doesn't quite have the ceiling of what the other one is, but just cannot catch the ball. So, I mean, that to me, it seems pretty easy. Dontavian Wicks. It'd be phenomenal. Like, if he could catch the ball, he would be a superstar. And maybe he does all of a sudden, like, turn the page and do that, which makes me concerned that I just selected Wicks for that. But Dobbs, more consistent, kind of feels like that security blanket for Jordan Love. Really, I think he might be one of our bucket getters, right? Like on a third down, you can just throw it to him and make sure that you probably know 9 times out of 10, 8 times out of 10, he's probably going to catch it. So without completely diving down into semantics and all that sort of intricacies of everything, to me, it's Wicks, and it's just simple. Dobbs catches the ball better than Wicks.
So just to be clear, you're sending Wicks in the trade. I think I agree with you. The only thing that gives me pause is Romeo's concussion history now.
For sure.
And whatever happened with his suspension last season, which if you take at least one of those elements out, like let's just say he's got a clean bill of health and we feel like we settled in a good place with him,
That'd be
no question.
Almost.
Right? But who knows with the concussions, Romeo could suffer those, throughout next season and decide to retire. And then we obviously came out on the better end of that. For everything you said though, Rob, just pure like on the field, when healthy, makes the Packers roster better. I also agree. I'm keeping Romeo. And Wicks would be in that trade. But I am fearful that maybe the Seahawks would find a dude there.
Yeah, his ceiling, Wicks' ceiling, like if he can catch the ball, like he can be amazing. Like you can see it in his route running, right? Like the dude gets open like no one else, I think, in the league. So it's just strictly he can't catch the ball.
I saw videos of him yesterday on X working in the lab trying to catch the ball. He needs to catch like 1,000 balls a day. So,
yes,
I really hope that he actually gets with Jordan Love this offseason and catches some live balls from him too. So enough about that wide receiver, but let's talk about another one. So Davante Adams, the reports now have been indicated by Tony Pauline that the Jets are expected to release the Jets are expected to release Davante Adams before the free agency period opens next week. So he will be a free agent. Do you think the Packers go after him?
Depends on how much he costs. I think it's really going to come down to that. $30 million? No way. $25 million? No, I don't think so. So I don't know. Maybe it's a 1-year, contract that's, got a lot of incentives. It's a little bit lower than that. I could see maybe the Packers kind of entertaining. It does make sense. I mean, he did have a ton of drops last year, 10 drops, or whatever it was. But we know Davante Adams, he's, extremely good route runner, and he does catch the ball, very consistently. So I would like to think that that's an outlier year. Plus just the dismay of the organizations he was in, right? Like the Raiders and then the Jets. And the Jets caught a little bit of fire last year. But I don't think it'll happen, though. I guess I would be surprised. But if it did, I mean, I wouldn't hate it. What do you think?
I think the Packers are going to be very interested. Now, remember, he is a 34-year-old wide receiver coming into the year, so he is definitely entering the back end of his career. Excuse me, I am a little froggy this morning. He definitely is entering the back end of his career. But I agree with you. It's going to be what does Davante want? Does he want to secure his kind of last final big contract or does he want to play for a contender in a franchise where he's, beloved by the fan base and, can probably have a real chance to win a championship in a 2 or 3 year window. I kind of think the Packers line is going to be 2 years, $50 million. And if he's willing to take that, even if there's a lot of guaranteed money, I think that he'll be a Green Bay Packer. If he thinks, well, this is the last time that I'm going to get paid, and I really want to see that be a 3-year deal, and I know there's some teams that are going to give me $30 million a year or closer to it.
And there will be.
And so, it'll be Davante's choice. 2 years, $50 million to play for the Green Bay Packers again, retire as a Packer, have a chance to win a Super Bowl, or 3 years, $90 million, maybe on another team that's got a good chance, maybe the Chargers, maybe the Steelers. So there's some playoff teams, but the Packers are going to have a line, and he'll just decide if he wants to be a Packer again.
Yep.
So one of your hot guys, Rob, that you've been kind of banging the drum for most of the offseason. I still want to see where you stand with him, but a lot of noise about DJ Reed being of extreme interest for the Green Bay Packers. So Rob Demoski was recently on, and gave a report that an agent that he talked to expects the Packers to be very active in the free agent market for corners, defensive linemen, and receivers, but named DJ Reed, somebody specifically that this agent cited that the Packers would be interested in, or named for us to watch out for. So do you still feel like he's a fit in Green Bay? And what do you think it takes to get that deal done?
Yeah, I think he's a very, very good corner. He would come in immediately and play very well within Hafley's system. He's going to come, I think, a little bit more on the expensive side. What is he going to be this year, Jordan? 29, 28, something like that, right?
He's going to be 28, yeah. And I think that he's projected to go somewhere around $14 or $15 million average annual value.
Yeah. So again, I think the point that you brought up about Davante Adams, I'd be very interested in this for the Packers. If not this, obviously, I would be shocked if they at least don't get a corner or two within the draft. But 14 or 15 million seems a bit rich to me. I'm sure it does to you as well, but I like that more in the 11 to 12, type of range. About a couple years, or maybe 3 year and the last year as an option or something like that. He has shown that he has been consistent though. I mean, since he did come on the Jets, what was it, 3 years ago? 72.5 grade, and then 77.9 grade in 2023, and then last year 70.7. So his floor is really standard, consistent cornerback play, right? As far as the grades and the metrics go. So you definitely know what you're going to get when you get him. And who knows, maybe Hafley could even just explore that well with his, vision and ball hawking type of mentality that he has there with the secondary for his defense. So I like it for the Packers, but again, too, it comes down to years, contract. 15 million seems a bit rich to me. So,
the more and more I think about it, I'm okay with the average annual value. It'll be the length of the contract that's going to be a deterrent for me.
Sure.
He's 28, and he knows this is his biggest opportunity to cash in. So if the Packers gave him a 3-year deal at 15 a year for 45, I think that's pretty fair, right? He's not a frontline guy. He's not a top 10 kind of corner that's going to garner a 22, a 24, $25 million deal. I think that's kind of where Byron Murphy's going to go. So he's kind of that B tier.
Yeah. My
biggest thing is with him is that he has a lot of pass breakups, but he has not taken the ball away much in his career.
Yeah.
But he's extremely consistent. His floor is consistent, but his ceiling is limited. I would be comfortable if they gave him up to a 3-year deal. I just think that there's going to be some other team that's more desperate. It might be the $15 million a year annually but they might be willing to give him 4 or 5 years. And I don't think the Packers are willing to commit to players that are going to be, age 31, age 32. I think that will be the holdup, if any. If he's like, yep, let's do it for 2 years, and I can cash in again once more after I can try to win a Super Bowl with the Packers.
And prove it, right? That he, up his game and prove it, right? So.
Yeah, and the Packers might even go, okay, yeah, we'll do 2 years, $31 million. We'll give you $15.5 million a year. We'll sweeten you a little bit if you sign a shorter deal.
Yeah.
And then let's do this thing. So, but if he wants long security, no.
Yeah. And I still like we've talked about too as well. You guys can check out some of our previous pods, but Paulson and Adebo, age, ball hawking. If he's healthy, that's kind of only the big kind of outlier there. That to me still feels like the Packers' best bet if I were the GM.
100%. I like that too. Last kind of Packers rumor mill item or headline that's kind of floating around out there, but it looks like the Packers are set potentially to play overseas again this year and play the Steelers in Ireland. Obviously, we know our beloved Green Bay Packers are one of the biggest draws in NFL football and professional sports in general. So how are you feeling about having to play overseas again this season, given our history in those games?
Well, I mean, just as a fan, I'm excited. I've always wanted to go to Ireland. I think that's pretty sweet. It's not quite as far as maybe I'm not gonna point that out because somebody could probably fact check me, but I was just about to say I don't think it's quite as far as Sao Paulo, Brazil, but maybe it is. That is quite a way along the ocean there. So I think it's awesome. I think it's very cool. I can totally see what the NFL is doing. I don't know. I like it. It's probably not as good, for the Packers. It's basically the Packers going over to England, right? Just going a little bit up north there. I would die and go to heaven if I could ever make something like this a trip work out. I'm sure you would too, Jordan. It'd just be a kill two birds with one stone. Just wanted to see Ireland in general, and then the Packers are there to play iconic Packers and Steelers, right? That was the last Super Bowl that we saw that the Packers won too. So I'd be thrilled. Could totally see why the Packers and the players and the NFL players in general get a little bit exhausted of this, but they better start to learn to like it because it seems like every year they're picking a new place that they haven't played at from before. So it's going to be ongoing.
Yeah, and I think that this is, I think they've confirmed 7 or 8 international games this season. So that means if every team, or if they're playing at least different teams for all 7 of those games, that's half the league right now, 14 or 16 teams.
Yep.
So it's inevitable almost that every other season that you're going to have to travel. I do like two, blue blood, hard-nosed teams, the Packers and the Steelers playing in Ireland. I think those are 2 teams that the folks of Ireland can kind of relate to and get behind. So I think that makes a lot of sense. I do like the fact that it is a road game against an AFC opponent as well, so it's not going to cost the Packers one of our precious home games at Lambeau, which I still think the Packers are taking a pretty hardline approach of, we'll play your game and we'll go overseas, just don't take anything from us from Lambeau, because those games and the money that comes into Green Bay means so much to our community to be able to maintain what we're doing here. So yeah, that kind of brings us to the end of the rumors and hot topics out there. But let's just dive in for maybe 5-6 minutes about some of our initial impressions after the NFL scouting combine. A couple of guys that definitely tested well and make sense for the Packers, or and maybe a couple guys or things that didn't fall the Packers' way. But what are your initial takes after the combine?
So Shamar Stewart tested out of his mind. I think he had official 10 RAS score. He'll be gone before the Packers pick. I'd be shocked if he isn't. Defensive tackle Harmon, Derek Harmon from the Ducks. Was he like one of the only top ones to actually go out there and like compete? I feel like that means a lot to, at least to me as a fan. So I'm sure it's got to mean quite a bit to the GMs, to the scouts, and everyone down there on the field. But he tested very, very, very well.
Mm-hmm.
So I like him as a great option for the Packers. Jayden Higgins, is another one that tested extremely well. Not the fastest guy, but man, just crisp route running and his gauntlet drill. He caught literally everything and was smooth about it too. So I love him as a second round projection. Shocker, Matthew Golden from Texas ran out of his mind, 4.29 second 40-yard dash. Rob's bold take. Just me, not Jordan living on this island. So this is just Rob living on this island. Matthew Golden will be the first wide receiver taken off the board. Yes, I know Terrion McMillan and Luther Burden are up there, and possibly Mbuke from Ohio State. Could be there in that competition. But I think Matthew Golden just tested so well. He's already got great route running, and then he showed how blazing fast he can be. We saw how important that is to a team like the Kansas City Chiefs and Xavier Worthy, who got him at the back half of that first. I think maybe it was with that last pick or the first pick in the second round. So I think that he will be the first wide receiver taken off the board. And then just real quick here, Jared Wilson, the center from Georgia. I'll admit that I didn't have time to watch a ton of tape on him, but after how he tested and how he looked, and especially how Brian Gutekunst loves his Georgia Bulldogs, just a stud center with really good athleticism, 98% of top of that athleticism to be specific. So he tested out of his mind, and I really like him as an additional prospect there on the offensive line, maybe on day 2. So.
No, lots of good stuff. One thing I just wanted to note is that you said Jayden Higgins is not the fastest guy, but he actually went out and ran faster than a lot of people expected him to. He ran a very, very good 4.47. So yeah. I think a lot of people expected him to run in the 4.5s. I think that Jayden Higgins is going to not make it past pick 40, 45. And
you are
if the
correct.
I think if the Packers want him, they're going to have to go up and get him. Maybe find a way to get some extra draft capital and do the Christian Watson maneuver and get back into the 30s if they really love Jayden Higgins. Because I don't think they're going to draft in the first. But here's the other option, and I really love it the more and more that I've seen it done, is the Packers trading back out of pick 23 into the back end of the first round or early second round. And I know we probably want to see him pick on day 1, so maybe like a trade with the Kansas City Chiefs, get the second to last pick on night 1, pick up an extra second rounder, like pick 63, I think they have. Then I feel a lot more comfortable with taking Jayden Higgins at that second pick, or that pick 31, end of the first round. And then we still got all kinds of draft capital to address defensive tackle and edge and, the center from Georgia on day 2. So we'll see what happens. Jayden Higgins' running mate, Jalen Noel, had a great combine too. He ran a 4.3. He had a 41.5-inch vertical. I think he is a very intriguing prospect as well in the second or third round. The problem is that he is very redundant with Jayden Reed, and they would just have to make a commitment to see if they wanted to add another body type exactly like Jayden Reed to the room. But I was very impressed with a lot of Iowa State prospects throughout this. Couple quick takes. Rob and I are going to do like a little bit more of a full combine reactions and breakdown, but just fast corners. Maxwell Harriston tested extremely well. He ran a 4.28.
Yeah.
And he's somebody that we like a lot for the second round. I think he moved himself way up into like an early second round pick. He was very impressive. I think that the biggest concern for there is that he weighed even lighter at the combine than we expected him to at 183.
Yeah.
And that probably safely takes him off the Packers draft board, because we know that their bare bones threshold is like 190.
Yeah.
And, maybe if he was like 188, which he was kind of projected 189 before, they're like, yeah, we can fatten him up. We can put 2 or 3 pounds on him. But that's a lot of weight to add to him at this point in time. So Darren Porter, he ran fast. He ran a 4.3. We love his size.
Yeah.
The rest of his numbers were extremely impressive. And then a guy who I think is going to move up the draft board. We talked about him a couple episodes ago, but Jacob Parrish, a corner from Kansas State, he ran low 40 time. I think they clocked him at like 23.84 miles per hour. His measurables came in pretty solid, 5'10", 191, so he does meet that weight threshold. He's a little short, but remember, Jaire Alexander was, 5'10" and some change as well. So if the Packers could have him in the 3rd or 4th round, especially if they missed out on a couple of these other key guys in the first, like Trey Amos, and, maybe they went some other direction, Jacob Parrish in the 3rd or 4th round would make a lot of sense for Green Bay. And Rob and I both agree. We love his physicality and his tackling. Kind of the opposite of where we're at with Jaire at this point in time. So, just, really impressed with a couple linemen. Marcus Mabeau and Gray's Abel tested well. And, I'd be remiss not to, shout out the safety from South Carolina, Nick Amanawari. I think he played himself safely into a 1st-round pick. We're probably not into the safety market, especially not on day one. But he put on a show at the combine. So, just going to throw it to Rob a couple, we'll call them losers, but it's more like losers for Packers fans because the testing probably eliminated a couple of guys off of the Packers boards, maybe not completely, but especially early. So, what did we see at the combine that might have eliminated some dudes from the Packers draft boards or Packers fans' hopes to take those guys?
Yeah, I mean, Goody says that they're going to stick to the Packers mold and draft strategy and history. So that removes a lot of sub 255-pound type of, I think, very, very good prospects, unfortunately. And if they did want something similar, Jordan and I have, had this conversation before. About getting some more quote-unquote speed. But James Pierce Jr., he had an amazing combine. I think this guy is just going to be a stud. He has Brian Burns. That was his comp, too, on it, written all over him. Donovan
Izukarike.
Thank you. Was also another one there that wasn't able to meet that. Mike Green, beloved Mike Green, who I think is definitely going to be very good and can hold up against the run that he's shown, but maybe the conference, maybe the competition one is good, whatever. He's probably not going to get drafted. Well, by the Packers, yes. Sorry. Sorry, you're done. You can't get drafted at all. Or Omar Norman Lott. 291 pounds. Typically, Packers do not draft defensive tackles under 300 pounds. I think the only kind of time that they went out of that mold was maybe Colby Wooden, but that was towards the later back half of that draft. So then maybe they went out of their way for their athletic thresholds and standards. But wide receivers too that we hoped on here that would be that both Jordan and I liked and have banged the drum for. But Jalen Royals. A 4.42 40 time, was projected and rumored that he did run a 4.3. So that was a little disappointing. He does bring some redundancy too. Like, what are you going to do in there with Jayden Reed? So I don't think that he'll probably be a Packer. And then Pat Bryant, your bro, your wide receiver from Illinois, 4.61 40 time. I will say though, he had an amazing gauntlet. He looked very smooth in his drills, and so if you really do feel like you just want to take a flyer on a guy on a day 3, I think that he'd be amazing, and it shows that he can play too.
Yeah, just a couple of notes on that, right? I'm being a little harsh based on thresholds, so don't shoot us yet. Pat Bryant did run a very similar 40 time to Dontavian Wicks, so
there you go.
In the fifth or sixth round, very similar draft position to Dontavian Wicks, Pat Bryant could be a 5th round or 6th round selection for the Packers, and probably more of a 5th with his gauntlet drill and some of his other testing. So, maybe not totally off the board, probably somebody we're still going to advocate for on this show. But, we're just kind of, reading the writing on the wall to some extent. Jalen Reed, his 4.42 time, not bad. But the only reason he's on this list is because if they were going to go redundant, it had to be high.
Jalen Royals, right?
Jalen Royals, what did I say?
Jalen Reed.
Yeah, well, there's too many Jadens and Jalen's.
Yes. I know what you meant. Yeah.
Royals. And you know what? The one other thing about Mike Green is he was 251. I think that if the Packers felt like with his strength that he could get to 255, that I don't think he's totally off their board yet. But the other guys, James Pierce, Donovan Azurukarike, and Princely Emmanmillion, I think they're in the 240s. They're done.
Yeah.
And then the 3-cone. The Packers love the 3-cone, and it seems like collectively nobody ran the 3-cone.
Nobody wants to run the 3-cone anymore.
Nobody practiced the 3-cone because the guys who did, they didn't run well.
Yeah.
And so the Packers, that's a stat that they, a test that they enjoy and they like that. And I don't think that they're going to have much of that data to glean anything from. So kind of an L for the Packers evaluation in general there. So, but folks, that's all we got for you today. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode. Here, Rob and I talk a little bit about, free agency rumors, who could get cut, a couple of players that we like in the combine. So as always, tune in to listen to us every Wednesday and Saturday on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, whatever your preference is there. So thanks for listening. Share with your friends, your family, other Packers fans, other people who are interested in draft prospects. And connect with us on X. Rob's at Sounds Gouda with 3 A's, and I'm at Olson George. So until next time, Packers Nation, have a Gouda morning, a Gouda afternoon, and a Gouda night. Go Pack.
Go Pack.
Been wanted this shit forever. I've been in the field with whatever they throw at me. Brush it off, pick myself up, moving on to the better. Okay. Hey.